Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The air in the sumptuous living room of Bill Spencer's huge estate was thick with tension, enough to choke on. The huge chandelier shone a cold, cruel light on the gathering family, lighting faces etched with surprise, rage, and profound grief. Bill Spencer stood rigid, his normally strong posture weakened by the weight of betrayal. His hands clenched into fists at his sides as he stared at the incriminating evidence laid across the coffee table, a second set of independently verified DNA findings that shattered the delusion he'd been living under for months. In retrospect, it appeared to have started innocently enough. Luna Nozawa, the young woman who'd wormed her way into his life with wide-eyed innocence and a story of long-lost family ties, had produced a paternity test months ago, saying Bill was her father. He'd embraced it, welcoming her and her mother Poppy into his house and lavishing them with the luxury and security he'd always given his own. But questions had crept in, driven by Katie Logan's persistent suspicions and the mysterious claims of a deceased singer named Tom Starr. Katie had pressed for retests, stolen samples, and anything else that would reveal the truth. And here it was. Bill was not Luna's father. The original exam had been falsified, not by Poppy, not by an outsider, but by Bill himself. The confession had come out during a heated argument earlier that day. Bill had confessed after being confronted with Katie's claims and irrefutable evidence from a private lab. He desperately wanted a daughter, a new beginning after years of strained relationships with his sons. When Lee Finnegan, Poppy's sister and a trusted doctor, suggested manipulating the findings to give Luna the stable father figure she deserved, Bill embraced the opportunity. He justified it as a kindness, a way to reunite the family he had always desired. However, now that it was exposed, it felt poisonous. Luna perched on the edge of the sofa, face pale and eyes wide with surprise.
She didn't know.
She'd been living her life as if Bill was her biological father all along. The truth hit her like a tidal wave, erasing any sense of belonging she'd clung to in this chaotic world of fashion empires and family feuds. Poppy, her mother, stood close, motionless and startled, her free-spirited persona disintegrating as she comprehended the falsehood that had upended their lives. While Spencer, Bill's youngest son, paced the room, his college-aged face twisted with uncertainty and wrath. He'd been suspicious of Luna from the start, sensing something wrong about her quick assimilation into the Spencer family. Now that he knew his father had lied, not just to them but to the entire world, about something as basic as family links, he felt the ground move beneath him. "How could you do this, Dad?" he cried, his voice breaking. "You falsified DNA? You built all of this on a lie?" Bill asked, his voice low and gravelly with sadness. "I thought I was giving her what she needed, what we all needed, a family." But Katie Logan, the moral compass in this storm of Spencer drama, couldn't suppress her grief. She backed away slowly, her heels clicking on the marble floor, until she reached the far corner of the room, near the tall windows that overlooked the manicured gardens. The light framed her like a silhouette of sadness, her shoulders heaving as silent tears streamed down her cheeks. Katie, who had fought tooth and nail to keep her son Will safe from what she regarded as gold-digging intruders, had been proven correct in the worst way. Yet, victory tasted like ash. This wasn't just about being correct. It was about the man she still loved despite everything, exhibiting a level of desperation she hadn't expected. She slid down the wall, curled into herself in the corner, arms wrapped around her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. The cries were muffled at first, hidden in her sleeves, but they eventually resonated gently throughout the room, raw, guttural noises of a heart breaking again. Katie had recently reconnected with Bill, drawn back by shared concern for their son and the resurgence of old feelings. She had allowed herself to hope and believe in redemption. But this? Falsifying paternity to create a daughter? It spoke of great loneliness, which horrified her, matching her own feelings of loss and abandonment. Nobody approached her at first. The room froze in the aftermath of the bombshell. Luna apologized, her voice shaking, but it fell on deaf ears. Poppy reached for her daughter and pulled her close, both women drifting in the wreckage. Will paused his pacing and stared at his father, filled with sadness and rage. Bill, the indomitable dollar bill Spencer, was reduced, his gaze riveted on Katie's huddled figure. Finally, he approached her, kneeling awkwardly in his tailored suit. "Katie," he muttered, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. I never meant." She lifted her head, her eyes red-rimmed and angry behind the tears. "Don't," she choked. "Just don't." The pain in her eyes went deeper than any allegation. She had already lost him to Brooke, other women, and his own aspirations, but this time seemed different. This was a breach of trust at its heart, a manipulation of life itself. The fallout spread. The news of the forged DNA traveled fast through Los Angeles's close-knit affluent community. Ridge and Brooke heard murmurs at Forrester Creations, and the scandal hit close to home because of their convoluted relationship with Bill. Steffi, who was always protective of her family, seethed at the prospect of more Spencer upheavals spilling over. Hope, navigating her own romantic entanglements, felt a twinge of sorrow for Luna, the young woman trapped in the web. Back at the mansion, the evening passed in tight, quiet, interrupted by shouts. Luna fled to her chamber, doubting every aspect of her identity. Who was her actual father? Tom Starr's previous claims reappeared in her head, frightening her. Poppy confronted Bill discreetly, her customary calm replaced with a searing rage. "You used us," she charged. "Played God with our lives." Bill defended himself weakly, claiming it was out of love, but even he realized how hollow that sounded. His sons, Liam and Wyatt, called in, their expressions a mix of surprise and "I told you so." The Spencer empire, founded on power and perception, was now under public examination. This would be the subject of weeks of tabloid coverage. Katie sat in the corner for what seemed like hours, her cries fading to fatigued sniffles. Will soon joined her, sitting next to his mother on the floor, offering silent support. "Mom," he whispered softly, "we'll get through this. Together." She nodded and rested her head on his shoulder, but the tears did not cease. The bold and the beautiful world went on. Fashion displays, rivalries, romances. But in that corner, Katie lamented not just the falsehood, but also the frailty of the man she had once thought unbreakable. Days progressed into weeks, and the scandal reshaped alliances. Luna isolated herself, finding refuge with old acquaintances at Forrester while dealing with her mother's past and the lack of genuine paternity. Bill plunged himself into his work, seeking to contain the damage, but remorse gnawed at him. He visited Katie several times, begging for forgiveness, but she kept her distance, her heart guarded once more. In quiet moments, Katie mused on the irony. She had warned everyone about Poppy and Luna, suspecting their motivations, only to discover Bill's lie. It prompted her to address her own lingering emotions, love coupled with apprehension. Can she ever trust him again? The drama heightened when Lee Finnegan admitted her role in the tampering, claiming she did so to safeguard family secrets. Accusations flew, and relationships deteriorated further. Finn, Lee's son, handled the repercussions professionally, while Steffi consoled him through the family embarrassment. Despite the tumult, glimmers of healing arose. Katie found strength in her relationship with Will, transforming her pain into a call for sincerity in relationships. Bill, humbled, entered treatment to address his fear of loneliness. Luna, arguably the most impacted, set out on a voyage of self-discovery. Therapy sessions revealed layers of insecurity from her turbulent upbringing, which fueled her attachment to the Spencer name. She gradually gained independence, interning deeper at Forrester and demonstrating her worth outside false relationships. Poppy, contemplative, mends fences with Lee and uncovers buried family facts. Perhaps Tom Starr was involved after all, or another long-forgotten lover. However, Luna chose to identify herself beyond biology. Bill's redemptive path progressed gradually. Grand gestures, such as donations and apologies, were helpful, but true transformation came from action. He supported Katie from afar, respecting her space and demonstrating maturity. Katie, over time, softened. An accidental encounter at a charity event sparked conversation, and even humor. Tears came again, but this time they were cathartic. Forgiveness was not immediate, but it was possible. The mansion, which was once a symbol of illusory unity, has become a place of honest reckoning. Family dinners were difficult at first, with unsaid hurts, but eventually words flowed. Will bridge divides, and his youth provided perspective. Finally, the discovery of Bill's false DNA did not destroy them. Rather, it revealed flaws, driving growth. Katie emerged from that corner stronger, her cries inspiring change. The Spencers, flawed as always, persevered. Their relationships challenged but unbreakable in the bright, merciless world of Los Angeles' elite. Katie would subsequently regard the time in the corner as a watershed moment in her life. The tears swept away illusions, making space for authenticity. Bill, eternally transformed, treasured his real family. Luna discovered her position, not as a Spencer, but as herself. Life on the bold and the beautiful remained dramatic, passionate, and merciless, but with hearts a bit more open and scars a little less buried. The afternoon light streamed through Forrester Creations' lofty windows, spreading lengthy shadows throughout the design studio. The room was unusually silent, with the hum of invention replaced by a suffocating tension that hung in the air. Thomas stood near the cutting table, his jaw rigid and his hands gripped at his sides, as if he were protecting himself from something explosive. Even before he spoke, Hope could tell something was amiss. She recognized that expression. She'd seen it before, when truth threatened to ruin everything in its path. Thomas broke the pause with a quiet, controlled voice that sent shivers down Hope's spine. He informed her he discovered something that would transform all she thought she knew. Hope initially tried to dismiss it, figuring it was just another misunderstanding or a bit of office gossip that had gotten out of hand. But Thomas didn't move or soften. His eyes were fixated on her, fierce and unyielding, and fear began to rise in her chest. He pronounced Deke's name slowly and deliberately, as if each syllable held weight. Hope tensed instantly.
Deke.
Even hearing his name made her heart race. Thomas went on to explain that Deke was not who he claimed to be, that behind the charm and confidence lay a dark truth that might destroy lives, including hers. Hope shook her head and refused to believe him. She informed Thomas he was mistaken, that Deke had been truthful with her, and that whatever Thomas felt he knew had to be wrong. But Thomas did not stop. He set everything out, piece by piece. He talked about documents, links that didn't add up, and a past that Deke had buried carefully, but not completely. He showed that Deke had manipulated situations, used people, and even committed acts that were borderline criminal, acts that, if discovered, could damage Hope's name and her family's foundation. With each word, Hope felt the ground beneath her feet crumble. Her eyes welled up with tears as the reality of the situation became clear. She staggered back, putting a hand to her lips as she tried to breathe. She recalled the faith she had placed in Deke, the memories they had shared, and the plans she had begun to formulate. Everything immediately felt polluted, poisoned with lies. Thomas studied her intently, his look a mix of rage and something softer, concern, possibly even remorse. Hope's voice broke as she begged to understand why Thomas was telling her this now. Why expose Deke? Why risk destroying everything? Thomas responded honestly. He stated he couldn't stand by and watch her be duped, abused, or mistreated. He stated that a part of him was furious at Deke for deceiving Hope and angry at himself for not discovering the truth sooner. He informed her that the secret was already a ticking time bomb and that if he didn't reveal it, someone else would. That was the moment Hope absolutely broke down. Tears flowed down her face as she hurried toward Thomas, gripping his arm tightly. She begged him to stop, to remain silent, and to give her time. Her words fell over each other as she implored, warning him that revealing Deke now would destroy not only Deke, but also herself. She mentioned her children, her family, and her frail feeling of stability. She argued, She could handle Deke on her own, and that she wanted to control how and when the truth was revealed. Thomas drew his arm back softly but forcefully. He warned her that remaining silent would simply exacerbate the situation. He claimed that such secrets did not vanish. Rather, they festered. He warned her that Deke had already demonstrated that he was dangerous, capable of manipulation on a level Hope did not completely comprehend. Thomas insisted that saving Deke would require her to sacrifice herself, something he could not allow. Hope slumped into a chair and sobbed uncontrollably. Memories flooded her mind, moments when Deke appeared too perfect, too eager to please. She repeated talks, looking for clues she'd missed. Shame and sadness twisted inside her, making her feel vulnerable and dumb. She muttered that she loved Deke, or the man she believed he was, and that losing him like this was heartbreaking. Thomas's expression softened slightly as he acknowledged how awful it was. He informed her he wasn't doing this to hurt her, even though it was obvious. He admitted that he battled with the decision himself, split between loyalty and responsibility. But in the end, he believed the truth was more important than comfort. Hope stared up at him, her eyes red and puffy. She implored him again, this time quieter and more earnestly. She advised him to consider the ramifications, including how the impact might affect their families, the firm, and their children. She pledged to stop things with Deke, to make him go, and to handle the situation discreetly. She only needed Thomas's silence. Thomas shook his head slowly. He stated he didn't trust Deke to leave quietly. He predicted that Deke would lash out, manipulate people, or twist the story to make himself look like the victim. Thomas warned Hope that by remaining silent, she would be giving Deke power, something he refused to do. Hope stood up again, pacing back and forth, and the room seemed impossibly small. Her hands trembled as she attempted to gather her thoughts. She accused Thomas of loving it and of using Deke's secret to exert control over her life. Thomas bristled at that, his voice raising for the first time as he argued he was not the villain in this situation. He reminded her of his own past failures, struggles with darkness, and how concealment had almost ruined him. Those words hit Hope hard. She stopped walking and turned to face him, recognizing that Thomas was speaking out of anguish rather than cruelty. Nonetheless, that realization did not alleviate the horror that gripped her heart. She felt trapped between two horrible choices: reveal the truth and risk losing everything, or keep it secret and live in perpetual fear. As the fight progressed, emotions ran high. Hope erupted, accusing Thomas of never trusting her judgment. Thomas said that her judgment was affected by love and hope that Deke could become someone he wasn't. Their shouts reverberated around the empty studio, each phrase cutting harder than the last. Hope's fury eventually drained away, leaving her exhausted. She sank back into the chair, her shoulders sagging. In a weak, broken voice, she asked Thomas what would happen next. He informed her he was going to confront Deke and reveal the facts before Deke could do more harm. He stated he'd give Hope the opportunity to be present and hear it personally, but he wouldn't remain mute. Hope closed her eyes, tears falling down her cheeks. She recognized that no matter how much she pled, Thomas had already made his decision. The weight of the inevitable pressed down on her, making it difficult to breathe. She mumbled that she wished she had listened to her intuition and never allowed Deke into her life. Thomas moved closer, his voice softening. He informed her that none of this was her fault, that Deke was brilliant at lying. He advised her to be strong and confront the reality with courage. He vowed she would not be alone, even if everything went apart. Hope stared at him, searching for any signs of uncertainty, any indication that he would rethink. But she just found determination. She nodded slowly, acknowledging the reality that she could no longer escape. The secret was out, and there was no going back. As Thomas turned to leave, Hope called after him, barely audible. She advised him to be cautious and consider the consequences for everyone concerned. Thomas hesitated at the entrance, staring back at her with a somber gaze. He claimed he would, but he couldn't guarantee that the truth would not hurt. When he went, The room became silent once more. Hope sat alone, staring at the floor as tears fell. Her world had changed irrevocably in a couple of minutes. The man she loved wasn't who she thought he was, and the truth was about to come out. Outside the studio, Thomas took a deep breath to prepare himself for what lied ahead. He understood that revealing Deke's secret would cause havoc, but he believed it was the only way ahead. Behind him, Hope stood frozen in place, her heart devastated, knowing that once the truth was revealed, nothing in her life would ever be the same again.